The vast expanse of space before the Starweaver churned with activity. Admiral Jack Cooper stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the tactical holodisplay. Hundreds of ships, human, Zarquin, and various allied species moved into formation, a wall of defiance against the coming storm. "Status report," Jack commanded, his voice steady despite the tension thrumming through the ship. Major Greystone's fingers danced over his console. "All ships reporting ready, sir. The entropy cascade weapons are charged and standing by on all Nexus Breaker-class vessels." Jack nodded, allowing himself a moment of pride. The fleet before him represented the pinnacle of galactic cooperation, a force unlike anything the universe had ever seen. And yet... It still might not be enough, he murmured, almost to himself. "What was that?" Sir Greystone asked. Jack shook his head. "Nothing, Major. Carry on." A familiar presence appeared at his side, Dr. Emilia Winston, her face a mixture of determination and concern. "The science teams are ready, Jack. Whatever the Nexus throws at us, we'll adapt." He turned to her, struck once again by her brilliance and strength. In the months of preparation, they had grown close, their shared burden forging a bond that went beyond mere colleagues. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that, Emilia." Their moment was interrupted by an urgent alert. Zach Slath's voice came through the comm, tight with tension. "Admiral, we're detecting massive spatial distortions at the edge of the system. They're coming." Jack straightened, squaring his shoulders. "This is it, people. Battle stations. All ships assume defensive formation Omega." The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as officers rushed to their posts. Through the viewscreen, Jack watched as the fleet shifted, taking up the formation they had drilled countless times. Suddenly, space itself seemed to tear open. A vast, dark mass emerged from the rift the Nexus Vanguard had arrived. "My God," Greystone breathed. "The size of them." Jack's jaw tightened as he took in the sight. The Nexus ships were monstrous constructs, defying conventional design. They looked less like vessels and more like floating ecosystems, pulsing with an otherworldly energy. "Hold the line," Jack ordered, his voice carrying across the fleet-wide channel. "Remember your training. Remember what we're fighting for. Every world, every species in this galaxy is counting on us." As if in response to his words, the Nexus fleet unleashed its first salvo. Beams of coruscating energy lanced out, striking the forward elements of the defense fleet. Shields flared and buckled under the assault. "Return fire," Jack commanded. "Nexus breakers, prepare to engage entropy cascade weapons on my mark." The space between the fleets lit up with weapons fire. Traditional energy weapons and missiles were joined by the more exotic armaments developed for this very confrontation. Zarquin phase shift torpedoes, free intelligence quantum disruptors, and at the heart of it all, the entropy cascade. Nexus breakers fire. 5 of the massive ships unleashed their primary weapons. The fabric of space seemed to warp and twist as the entropy cascade effect took hold. Several Nexus vessels caught in the blast began to unravel, their very structure coming apart at the seams. A cheer went up across the bridge, but Jack remained focused. "Don't celebrate yet. That was just the opening move." As if to prove his point, the remaining Nexus ships adapted with terrifying speed. Their forms shifted, becoming more resistant to the entropy effect. Dr. Winston Jack called out, "We need countermeasures. They're adapting faster than we anticipated." Emilia nodded grimly, already coordinating with her science teams across the fleet. "We're on it, Jack, but we need time." "Time is one thing we don't have," Jack muttered. The battle raged on, a titanic clash of technologies and strategies. For every Nexus ship they destroyed, the enemy seemed to learn, to evolve. The defense fleet was holding, but casualties were mounting. Amid the chaos, Jack felt a strange calm settle over him. This was the moment everything had been building towards. Every decision, every sacrifice, every alliance forged in the crucible of impending doom, it all came down to this. He thought of Earth, of the simple farm he'd left behind so long ago. Of stubborn Pete, the old donkey whose determination had inspired him through countless challenges. of the billions of lives across the galaxy counting on them to hold the line. "All right," Jack said, his voice carrying the weight of command and the strength of unwavering resolve. "Let's show these Nexus bastards what happens when you threaten our galaxy. All ships, execute Battle Plan Theta. Let's bring the fight to them." As the fleet surged forward, meeting the Nexus head-on, Admiral Jack Cooper stood at the heart of it all. Farm boy, soldier, leader. The fate of everything hung in the balance, and he was ready to give everything to tip the scales. The void of space erupted into a maelstrom of energy as the combined fleet engaged the Nexus forces. Admiral Jack Cooper's eyes darted across the tactical displays, his mind racing to process the unfolding battle. "Nexus Breaker Squadron Alpha, focus fire on the lead dreadnought," Jack commanded. "Zarquin cruisers, provide cover with your phase shift barriers." The massive Nexus Breaker ships surged forward, their entropy cascade weapons charging. As they fired, space itself seemed to warp and twist. The lead Nexus dreadnought began to unravel, its biomechanical structure disintegrating. But the victory was short-lived. The surrounding Nexus ships quickly adapted, their forms shifting to become more resistant to the entropy effect. Sir Major Greystone called out, his voice tense. "The Nexus are adapting faster than we anticipated. Entropy cascade effectiveness is dropping by 22% with each volley." Jack's jaw tightened. "Dr. Winston, we need solutions. Can we modify the entropy cascade frequency?" Dr. Amelia Winston's fingers flew over her console as she coordinated with science teams across the fleet. "We're working on it, Jack. But every change we make, they adapt to it within minutes. It's like they're learning in real time." A massive explosion rocked the fleet. Jack watched in horror as one of the Zarquin cruisers was engulfed in a strange, dark energy. "Report," he demanded. Zach Slath's voice came through, tinged with shock. "It's some kind of antimatter weapon, Admiral. Our shields are ineffective against it." The battle continued to escalate, with losses mounting on both sides. Jack found himself making split-second decisions that could mean life or death for thousands. "Withdraw Task Force Gamma," he ordered, watching as a group of ships was about to be overwhelmed. "Sacrifice the automated defense platforms to cover their retreat." As he gave the order, Jack felt the weight of each life lost. But he knew that without these hard choices, they'd lose everything. Suddenly, an alert blared across the bridge. Admiral Greystone called out, "We're detecting a massive energy buildup in the center of the Nexus fleet. Something big is coming through." The fabric of space tore open, and a colossal Nexus construct emerged. It dwarfed even the largest ships in either fleet, its surface crawling with what looked like living circuitry. "My God," Dr. Winston breathed. "It's like nothing we've ever seen. The energy readings are off the charts." Jack's mind raced. They hadn't anticipated anything on this scale. "All ships, fall back and regroup. Concentrate all fire on that monstrosity." The combined fleet unleashed everything they had. Entropy cascades, phase shift torpedoes, quantum disruptors, a barrage that could have shattered a planet. But the Nexus behemoth shrugged it off, its surface rippling and adapting in real time. Then it retaliated. Tendrils of dark energy lashed out, each one capable of bisecting a capital ship. Jack watched in horror as entire squadrons were wiped out in seconds. "We can't stand against that thing," Greystone said, his voice shaking. "Sir, we need to retreat." But Jack knew retreating would mean sacrificing countless populated systems. They had to find a way to stop it here. "Dr. Winston," he called out, an idea forming. "The entropy cascade, can we overload it? Create a chain reaction?" Amelia's eyes widened as she grasped his plan. "It's possible, but Jack, the resulting explosion could take out half our fleet along with the Nexus." Jack closed his eyes for a moment, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. When he opened them, his voice was steel. "Do it. Prepare the Nexus breakers for a suicide run." As the orders went out, Jack addressed the fleet. "All ships, this is Admiral Cooper. We're about to execute a high-risk maneuver. All vessels not directly involved, withdraw to minimum safe distance. It has been an honor serving with each and every one of you." He turned to Amelia, their eyes meeting in a moment of unspoken understanding. There would be time for words later if they survived. "Nexus breakers," Jack commanded, his voice carrying across the fleet. "Engage suicide protocols. Take that monster to hell with you." The massive ships surged forward, their entropy cascade weapons overloading. They plunged into the heart of the Nexus fleet, straight for the colossal behemoth. The resulting explosion was unlike anything Jack had ever seen. It was as if reality itself was being torn apart. The Nexus behemoth writhed, caught in the heart of the maelstrom. But as the energy dissipated, Jack's heart sank. The monster was damaged, but still intact. "It's still alive," Greystone said, disbelief in his voice. "How is that possible?" Before Jack could respond, a priority message came through. It was Admiral Leeds, his face grim. "Cooper, we've just received critical intelligence. The Nexus. They're not what we thought they were. This changes everything." As Leeds began to explain, Jack felt the universe shift under his feet. The battle was far from over, and the revelations to come would challenge everything they thought they knew about their enemy and themselves. The bridge of the Starweaver shuddered as another Nexus energy blast glanced off their shields. Admiral Jack Cooper gripped the tactical console, his eyes darting between holographic displays of the battle raging around them. "Status report," he barked, voice steady despite the chaos. Major Greystone's response was grim. "Sir, the Nexus are concentrating their forces on Sector 7. The line is starting to buckle." Jack's jaw tightened as he assessed the situation. Sector 7 was a crucial linchpin in their defensive strategy. If it fell, the entire front would collapse. Zack Slath, he called out to his Zar Quinn ally. "We need reinforcements in Sector 7. Can your cruisers hold the line?" The alien's skin rippled with determination. "We will not falter, Admiral. The Zar Quinn remember the fall of our homeworld. We die before we let another world suffer that fate." As Zar Quinn's ships surged towards the threatened sector, a new alert blared across the bridge. Sir Greystone's voice was tight with alarm. "Multiple breaches detected in Sector 7. Nexus forces are pushing through." Jack made a split-second decision. "All available units converge on those breach points. We need to seal them now." The space around Sector 7 became a maelstrom of energy weapons and explosions as Allied ships fought desperately to contain the Nexus advance. Jack watched as Zar Quinn cruisers unleashed salvos of phase-shift torpedoes, while free intelligence drone swarms darted between larger vessels, harrying the Nexus ships. But it wasn't enough. The Nexus pushed relentlessly forward, their adaptive technology evolving in real time to counter each new tactic. Dr. Winston's voice cut through the din. "I think I found a way to temporarily disrupt the Nexus adaptive capabilities. But we'd need to get close, dangerously close to their command ship." Jack's mind raced, weighing the risks against the potential reward. "How close?" "Point-blank range," Amelia replied, her eyes meeting his. "It's a one-way trip, Jack." The gravity of the moment hung heavy in the air between them. Jack knew what he had to do. "Prep a strike team," he ordered. "I'll lead it myself." Protests erupted from around the bridge, but Jack silenced them with a raised hand. "This is our best shot. I won't order anyone else to undertake a suicide mission." As preparations were made, Jack took a moment with Amelia. "If this works." She cut him off, pressing a data chip into his hand. "When this works, the calculations are all there. Just come back, Jack." He nodded, allowing himself a brief moment to squeeze her hand before turning to leave. The next hour was a blur of frantic action. Jack led a small team of volunteers in a stealth ship, weaving through the chaos of battle towards the massive Nexus command vessel. They were nearly destroyed a dozen times, saved only by the incredible skill of their pilot and the covering fire from Allied ships. As they approached their target, Jack activated the device Dr. Winston had prepared. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Nexus ships in the vicinity began to falter, their adaptive capabilities temporarily neutralized. "All ships," Jack broadcast, "this is our window. Push them back." The Allied fleet surged forward, taking advantage of the Nexus' momentary weakness. For a brief, shining moment, it seemed like they might turn the tide. But the victory was short-lived. The Nexus command ship, recognizing the threat, turned its full attention to Jack's small vessel. "Evasive maneuvers," Jack shouted, but it was too late. A blast of dark energy engulfed their ship. Systems failed across the board as the hull began to disintegrate. "Get to the escape pods," Jack ordered his team, staying behind to ensure everyone made it out. As the last pod ejected, Jack found himself alone on the bridge of the dying ship. Through the view screen, he watched Allied and Nexus ships clash in a titanic struggle. In the distance, he could see the Starweaver, still fighting valiantly. "I'm sorry, Amelia," he murmured, closing his eyes as the ship began to break apart around him. Suddenly, a strange energy enveloped him. Jack felt a moment of disorientation, and then found himself standing on the bridge of the Starweaver, surrounded by shocked faces. "How?" he began, but was cut off by Zach's laugh. "Quantum entanglement transporter," the Tsar Quinn explained, his skin pulsing with relief. "A gift from the free intelligence. We couldn't let our greatest admiral fall so easily." Before Jack could respond, alarms blared across the ship. Major Greystone's voice was filled with awe and terror. "Sir, the Nexus, they're retreating." Jack turned to the view screen, watching in disbelief as the massive Nexus fleet began to withdraw. But there was no time for celebration. A priority communication came through from Earth Command. Admiral Leeds' face appeared, his expression grave. "Cooper, get your fleet back to Earth immediately. We've made a terrible mistake. The true enemy. It's not what we thought." As the transmission cut out, Jack felt a chill run down his spine. They had won the battle, but at a terrible cost. And now it seemed the real war was just beginning. "Set course for Earth," he ordered, his voice heavy with the weight of unknown trials to come. "Maximum speed." As the Starweaver and the remnants of the fleet prepared to jump, Jack's thoughts turned to the revelations that awaited them. The Starweaver dropped out of FTL in Earth's orbit, joining a massive gathering of ships from across the Earth Empire and its allies. Admiral Jack Cooper stood on the bridge, his face grim as he took in the sight of the homeworld he had fought so hard to protect. Admiral Major Greystone's voice broke through his reverie. "We're being hailed by Earth Command. They're requesting your immediate presence at a top-secret briefing." Jack nodded, turning to Dr. Amelia Winston. "Amelia, I want you there too. Whatever this is about, we'll need your scientific insight." Minutes later, they found themselves in a heavily guarded underground facility beneath Earth Command headquarters. The room was filled with the highest-ranking officials from Earth, Tsar Quinn High Command, and representatives from the Free Intelligence. Admiral Leeds stood at the center, his face haggard. "Thank you all for coming. What I'm about to share will change everything we thought we knew about this war." The lights dimmed, and a holographic display flickered to life, showing detailed scans of Nexus technology. Jack leaned forward, his eyes widening as he began to understand what he was seeing. "Is that?" he began, but Leeds cut him off. "Yes, Cooper. The Nexus. They're us, or rather, what we might become." A shocked murmur ran through the room. Leeds continued, his voice heavy. "The Nexus are not invaders from another galaxy. They're refugees from our own future, fleeing the heat death of the universe eons from now." Dr. Winston stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her shock. "But how is that possible? The temporal paradoxes alone are resolved through quantum entanglement on a cosmic scale," a metallic voice interjected. X-23, the Free Intelligence representative, moved to the center of the room. "We have long theorized about such possibilities, but to see it realized." Jack's mind raced with the implications. If they're from our future, why are they attacking us? Why not just ask for help? Leeds sighed heavily. "Because they need more than help, Cooper. They need resources, vast amounts of them. And they need to ensure their own existence by making sure our civilizations develop along the exact path that leads to their creation." "So they're not here to destroy us," Jack said slowly, They're here to shape us, to ensure their own future at the cost of our free will. The room fell into a tense silence as everyone grappled with this revelation. Jack turned to Zach's laugh, seeing the conflict in his friend's color patterns. What did the Tsar Quinn make of this? Zach's lath's skin rippled with complex emotions. It is difficult to process. The destruction of our homeworld, all our losses. To think it was orchestrated by our own descendants. As discussions broke out across the room, Dr. Winston pulled Jack aside. Jack, I've been analyzing the data we captured. I think I've found a way to communicate directly with the Nexus hive mind. We could potentially negotiate, find a peaceful solution. Jack's heart leapt at the possibility, but a nagging doubt held him back. And if they refuse to negotiate? If the only way to preserve our free will is to ensure they never come to exist? Then we'd be committing genocide on a scale beyond imagination, Emilia replied, her voice barely a whisper. Their conversation was interrupted by Admiral Leeds. We don't have the luxury of lengthy debate. Our long-range sensors have detected another Nexus fleet, larger than anything we've seen before. They'll be here within days. Jack straightened, feeling the weight of the galaxy on his shoulders. What are your orders, sir? Leeds' eyes were steel. We have a weapon, Cooper. One that could wipe the Nexus from existence, erasing them from our timeline. But using it, the ethical implications are staggering. And if we don't use it, Jack asked, already knowing the answer. Then we fight a war we may not be able to win, against an enemy that knows our every move before we make it. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to Jack. In that moment, he felt the full weight of his journey from farm boy to admiral, from soldier to the man who might decide the fate of all life in the galaxy. Sir Jack said, his voice steady, before we make any decisions, I request permission to attempt communication with the Nexus. If Dr. Winston's method works, we might find a third option. Leeds studied him for a long moment before nodding. You have 48 hours, Cooper. After that, we deploy the weapon. The future of our species of all species is in your hands. As the meeting adjourned, Jack turned to his team. Emilia, Zach's Lath, Greystone, and X-23 gathered around him, each face showing a mix of determination and fear. All right, Jack said, his voice low but firm. Let's go talk to our future. The stealth ship Shadow Dancer sliced through the void, its experimental cloaking technology rendering it nearly invisible to both sensors and the naked eye. Inside, Admiral Jack Cooper sat at the helm, his hands steady despite the enormity of their mission. Approaching Nexus Fleet Perimeter, Major Greystone reported, his voice tight with tension. Jack nodded, glancing at the rest of his hand-picked team. Dr. Emilia Winston was finalizing calibrations on her communication device. Zach's Lath's skin rippled with anticipation, while X-23, the free intelligence representative, remained eerily still, processing data at inhuman speeds. Remember, Jack said, his voice low, our primary objective is communication, but be ready for anything. We don't know how the Nexus will react to our presence. As they penetrated deeper into the Nexus fleet, the view outside became increasingly surreal. The Nexus ships were less vessels and more like floating ecosystems, pulsing with bioluminescent energies and shifting in ways that defied conventional physics. My God, Emilia breathed, her scientific curiosity warring with awe and fear. It's like looking at the building blocks of reality itself. Suddenly, alarms blared across the Shadow Dancer. We've been detected, Greystone shouted, fingers flying across his console. Before Jack could respond, a beam of coruscating energy lanced out from the nearest Nexus construct, enveloping their ship. But instead of destruction, they felt a strange sensation, as if reality itself was bending around them. When the light faded, they found themselves inside a vast chamber that seemed to stretch infinitely in all directions. Bizarre structures floated in the void, merging and separating in hypnotic patterns. We're inside the Nexus command ship, X-23 stated, its metallic voice tinged with what might have been awe. This chamber, it exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Before they could fully process their surroundings, they were confronted by the most alien sight yet. A being materialized before them, or rather, multiple beings that seemed to phase in and out of each other, creating a constantly shifting form that hurt the eyes to look at directly. Humans, the entity spoke, its voice resonating not just in their ears but in their minds. You should not be here. This meeting violates causality. Jack stepped forward, suppressing his fear and disorientation. We've come to negotiate, to find a way for both our peoples to coexist without conflict. The nexus being rippled, its form briefly taking on aspects that looked disturbingly human. Coexistence is impossible. Your present and our future are mutually exclusive. There has to be another way, Amelia interjected, activating her communication device. We've analyzed your technology. With cooperation, we might find a solution that ensures your survival without sacrificing our free will. For a moment, the chamber seemed to pause, as if the very fabric of space-time was considering her words. Then, without warning, tendrils of energy lashed out, wrapping around each member of the team. Your understanding is incomplete, the Nexus entity stated. Allow us to show you the truth. Jack felt his consciousness expand, hurtled across time and space. He saw the heat death of the universe, the desperate measures taken by the last vestiges of life to survive. He witnessed the discovery of time travel, the realization that the only way forward was back. But as quickly as it began, the vision was violently interrupted. Alarms blared, and the chamber shook with the force of distant explosions. We are under attack, the Nexus being announced, its form becoming more erratic. The humans have deployed their weapon. Causality is unraveling. Jack's mind reeled. The 48 hours couldn't be up already. Unless... Time moves differently here, he realized aloud. Chaos erupted around them. The structures in the chamber began to disintegrate, and rifts in space-time tore open, showing glimpses of other realities, other possibilities. We must return to our ship, Zax Lath shouted, his skin flashing warning colors. As they struggled against the dissolution of reality around them, Jack made a split-second decision. He lunged towards the Nexus entity, his hand outstretched. Come with us. We can still find a solution. The being regarded him with what might have been surprise. You would save your enemy. We'd save our future, Jack replied firmly. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, the Nexus entity considered. Then, just as the chamber began to collapse entirely, it reached out and touched Jack's hand. A blinding flash of energy engulfed them all. When Jack's vision cleared, they were back aboard the Shadow Dancer, hurtling through space away from the disintegrating Nexus fleet. But they weren't alone. A swirling vortex of energy occupied the center of the bridge, the essence of the Nexus entity contained within. Did we just kidnap a Nexus? Greystone asked, his voice a mix of awe and disbelief. Before anyone could respond, the ship's communications crackled to life. Admiral Leeds' voice came through, tight with urgency. Cooper, where the hell are you? The weapon has been deployed. The Nexus fleet is falling apart, but we're detecting massive temporal distortions. The fabric of space-time itself is becoming unstable. Jack looked from the swirling vortex of the Nexus entity to his team, then back to the chaos visible through the view screen. They had averted one catastrophe only to face another, potentially greater one. Sir, he replied, his voice steady despite the turmoil around them, we're heading back with a guest, and possibly our last hope of fixing this mess. As the Shadow Dancer raced back towards Earth, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that the true battle, the one for the very nature of reality itself, was only just beginning. The Shadow Dancer burst out of FTL on the outskirts of the Sol system, alarms blaring as reality itself seemed to warp around them. Through the view screen, Admiral Jack Cooper and his team watched in horror as space-time fractured, creating a patchwork of temporal rifts that threatened to tear the system apart. My God, Dr. Amelia Winston breathed, her eyes wide. The weapon. It's destabilized the entire space-time continuum. Jack's jaw tightened as he took in the chaos. Earth's fleet was scattered, some ships caught in temporal bubbles where time moved at different speeds. Others were phasing in and out of existence, trapped between realities. Incoming transmission from Earth Command, Major Greystone announced. his voice tight with tension. Admiral Leeds' hologram materialized, his face a mask of barely contained panic. "Cooper, what the hell is going on? The weapon was supposed to erase the Nexus from our timeline, not this." Sir Jack replied, struggling to keep his voice steady. "The situation is more complex than we realized. We've brought back a representative from the Nexus. I believe it's our best shot at fixing this." Leeds' eyes widened as he noticed the swirling vortex of energy behind Jack. "You brought one of them here. Have you lost your mind, Cooper?" Before Jack could respond, the Nexus entity spoke, its voice resonating through their minds. "Your weapon has shattered the barriers between timelines. If not addressed, the fractures will spread, unraveling the very fabric of the universe." A tense silence fell over the bridge. Jack could see the fear and uncertainty on the faces of his crew, mirrored in Leeds' hologram. But there was no time for doubt. Sir Jack said, his voice filled with determination, "I need authorization to take the Starweaver to the epicenter of the temporal rifts. We have a plan, but we'll need the ship's full power to pull it off." Leeds hesitated for a moment, then nodded grimly. "Do what you have to, Cooper. The fate of everything is in your hands now." As the transmission ended, Jack turned to his team. "All right, people, we've got one shot at this. Amelia, work with the Nexus entity to modify the entropy cascade weapon. We're going to use it to stabilize the rifts." Zach's laugh, "Coordinate with the fleet. We need to establish a perimeter around the affected area. X-23, I need you to interface with the Starweaver's systems. We'll need every ounce of power we can get." As they transferred to the Starweaver and raced towards the heart of the temporal storm, Jack couldn't help but marvel at the sight before them. Shattered fragments of timelines drifted past glimpses of Earth's past, possible futures, and realities that never were. "We're approaching the epicenter," Greystone reported, his hands steady on the controls despite the chaos around them. Jack nodded, turning to where Amelia and the Nexus entity were making final adjustments to the modified entropy cascade. "Are we ready?" Amelia looked up, her face a mix of excitement and fear. "As ready as we'll ever be. But Jack, there's no way to know for sure what will happen when we activate it." Admiral X-23 interjected, its metallic voice urgent, "I'm detecting massive power fluctuations. The temporal rifts are expanding exponentially. We have minutes at most before the damage becomes irreversible." Jack took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the universe on his shoulders. It's now or never. Initiate the entropy cascade. The Starweaver shuddered as unprecedented levels of energy coursed through its systems. The modified entropy cascade fired, sending a wave of coruscating energy into the heart of the temporal maelstrom. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, with a reality-bending lurch, the fractures began to knit themselves back together. Timelines realigned, the patchwork of realities smoothing out into a cohesive whole. But the strain on the ship was immense. Alarms blared as systems overloaded and failed. Hull integrity failing, Greystone shouted over the din. "We can't take much more of this." Jack gripped his command chair, watching as reality reshaped itself around them. "Hold it together. We're almost there." Just when it seemed the Starweaver would tear itself apart, the temporal storm subsided. The view screen cleared, showing a calm, stable space. Earth floated serenely in the distance, whole and untouched. A cheer went up from the crew, but Jack's relief was short-lived. The Nexus entity, its form now more stable, turned to address him. "The immediate crisis has been averted," it said, its voice resonating with complex harmonics. "But the underlying issue remains. Our future, your future, is still doomed. The heat death of the universe cannot be avoided without intervention." Jack met the entity's gaze, feeling the weight of eons in its words. "Then we face it together. Not as enemies, but as allies. There has to be a way to ensure your survival without compromising our present." The entity seemed to consider this, its form rippling with what might have been hope. Perhaps there is wisdom in your words. A collaboration across time itself." As the Starweaver limped back towards Earth, Jack knew that this was only the beginning. They had saved reality itself from unraveling. but the greatest challenge, finding a way to secure the future of all life in the universe, still lay ahead. The Star Weaver hung in high orbit around Earth, its hull still bearing the scars of their recent ordeal. On the bridge, Admiral Jack Cooper stood before a shimmering portal, a gateway to the heart of the Nexus, created through the combined efforts of Dr. Winston, X-23, and their Nexus ally. "Are you sure about this?" Jack Amelia asked, concern evident in her voice. "Entering the Nexus hive mind, there's no telling what it could do to your psyche." Jack met her gaze, his determination unwavering. "We need answers, Amelia. And this might be our only chance to find a solution that saves both our present and their future." With a nod to his team, Jack stepped through the portal. The world around him dissolved into a kaleidoscope of light and sensation. When his vision cleared, he found himself in a vast, impossible space, a mental construct representing the collective consciousness of the Nexus. Countless voices whispered in his mind, fragments of thoughts and memories from across eons. At the center of it all stood a figure, a being that seemed to shift between human and something far beyond. "Welcome, Jack Cooper," the entity said, its voice resonating through the very fabric of the mindscape. "We are the Axiom, the guiding intelligence of the Nexus." Jack steeled himself, focusing on his purpose. "I've come to understand, to find a way for both our peoples to survive." The Axiom's form rippled, showing glimpses of Earth's history, of humanity's future, of the heat death of the universe. "Understanding may not bring the comfort you seek. Observe." Suddenly, Jack was hurtled through a series of visions. He saw humanity's far future, ascending to godlike levels of technology, spreading across the universe. He witnessed the slow death of stars, the cooling of galaxies, as entropy took its inexorable toll. He experienced the desperation of the last vestiges of life, seeking a way to survive the universe's heat death. He felt the terrible realization that the only path forward was backward, to reshape the past to ensure the future. As the visions faded, Jack found himself back before the Axiom, his mind reeling. "You're not just from our future," he said, understanding dawning. "You are our future, the ultimate evolution of life in the universe." The Axiom nodded, its form settling into something more recognizably human. "We are what remains when all other options are exhausted. Our journey back through time was meant to guide the development of life, to ensure that when the end comes, existence itself would have a chance to continue." Jack's tactical mind raced with the implications. "But your methods, the destruction, the attempts to control and reshape, there had to be another way." Perhaps the Axiom conceded. "But faced with the annihilation of all that ever was or would be, we chose action over inaction, the suffering of a few to save the many." As they debated, Jack became aware of other presences in the mindscape, echoes of his team, of the allies he'd made across species and time. Their experiences, their hopes and fears, all became part of his consciousness. And in that moment of cosmic awareness, Jack Cooper, farm boy, soldier, admiral, human, saw the threads of a possible solution. What if he proposed, his voice carrying the weight of multitudes, "Instead of reshaping the past, we work together to reshape the future. Combine the knowledge of the Nexus with the innovative spirit of the present." The Axiom's form pulsed with interest. "Elaborate." Jack's mind raced, drawing on the collective knowledge now at his disposal. "A collaboration across time. We focus our efforts not on controlling the past, but on finding a way to transcend the heat death itself, to evolve beyond the constraints of this universe." As he spoke, the mindscape around them shifted, showing glimpses of possible futures of joint human Nexus research teams, of cosmic engineering projects beyond imagination, of life finding a way to persist beyond the death of everything. The Axiom was silent for a long moment, its form cycling through countless iterations as it processed the proposal. Finally it spoke. "Your suggestion has merit, a path we had not considered, blinded perhaps by our own certainty." Hope surged through Jack, but he knew the hardest part was yet to come. It won't be easy. There's mistrust, fear, wounds that need healing on both sides. But if we work together across species, across time itself, the potential is significant. The Axiom agreed, but it would require a fundamental shift in our approach, in the very nature of our existence. Jack nodded, feeling the weight of the decision before them. It's a chance for both of us to evolve, to become something greater together than we ever could apart. The mindscape around them pulsed with energy as the axiom considered. Jack could feel the countless minds of the Nexus, weighing the proposal, debating, deciding. Finally, the axiom's form coalesced into a mirror image of Jack himself. "We accept your proposal, Jack Cooper. Let this be the beginning of a new era, not of conflict between past and future, but of collaboration towards a shared destiny." As the agreement was reached, Jack felt a surge of cosmic energy. The mindscape around them began to shift and change, reflecting the new path they had chosen. But even as hope blossomed, Jack knew that the real work was just beginning. They had found a way forward, but implementing it would test them all in ways they couldn't yet imagine. With a final nod to the axiom, Jack felt himself being pulled back to his physical form. As the mindscape faded around him, he carried with him the knowledge that the fate of all existence now rested on the unprecedented alliance they had just forged. The Starweaver's observation deck was packed with a diverse crowd: humans, Czar Quinn, free intelligence units, and even a few shimmering representatives of the Nexus. All eyes were fixed on the spectacular view outside Earth, blue and serene, orbited by a massive, otherworldly structure that pulsed with energy. Admiral Jack Cooper stood at the center of it all, still processing the events of the past few weeks. The Nexus Human Collaborative Research Station was a testament to the new era they had entered, an unprecedented alliance spanning time and space. "Quite a view, isn't it?" Dr. Amelia Winston said, joining him at the viewport. "Sometimes I still can't believe we pulled it off." Jack smiled, taking her hand in his. "We've only just begun, Amelia. The real work is ahead of us." Their moment was interrupted by Admiral Leeds, approaching with a group of high-ranking officials from various species. "Cooper," he said, his voice a mix of pride and lingering disbelief, "the Joint Council is ready for your briefing." As Jack addressed the assembled leaders, he couldn't help but marvel at how far they'd come. He outlined the early successes of the collaboration: breakthroughs in temporal physics, advancements in energy production that could stave off entropy, and the first tentative steps towards transcending the limitations of their current universe. "But our path forward isn't without challenges," Jack cautioned. "We're dealing with technologies and concepts that push the boundaries of our understanding. The potential for mishap, for unintended consequences, is enormous." Zaxlath, his skin rippling with thoughtful colors, spoke up. "And yet the alternative, the slow death of everything we know, is unthinkable. We must proceed with caution but also with hope." As the briefing concluded, Jack found himself pulled aside by X-23, the free intelligence representative. "Admiral," it said, its metallic voice tinged with what might have been excitement, "we've detected an anomaly at the edge of the solar system. It appears to be a doorway to another universe entirely." Jack's mind reeled with the implications. They had hoped to find a way to transcend their dying universe, but to have potential proof so soon. "Assemble an expedition team," he ordered. "But let's approach this carefully. We don't want to repeat past mistakes." As the observation deck cleared out, Jack found himself alone with Amelia. The weight of recent events, the enormity of what lay ahead, seemed to press down on him. Amelia, sensing his mood, squeezed his hand. "Hey," she said softly, "remember when you were just a farm boy dreaming of the stars?" Jack chuckled, feeling some of the tension ease. "Seems like a lifetime ago. I never could have imagined all this." "And yet, here you are," Amelia said, her eyes shining with admiration and love, "leading us into a future no one could have predicted." Moved by the moment, by everything they'd been through together, Jack made a decision. He'd been carrying a small box in his pocket for weeks, waiting for the right time. Now, with the Earth behind them and the infinite possibilities of the cosmos ahead, it felt perfect. Dropping to one knee, Jack pulled out the box and opened it, revealing a ring that sparkled like the stars themselves. "Amelia Winston," he said, his voice filled with emotion, "will you marry me? Will you join me on this cosmic adventure as my partner, my confidante, my wife?" Amelia's eyes widened, a smile blooming on her face. "Yes," she exclaimed, pulling Jack to his feet and into a passionate kiss. "1,000 times yes." Their joyous moment was met with a round of applause. Their friends and colleagues had quietly gathered, sensing the importance of the moment. Zach's lithe skin pulsed with colors of celebration, while X-23 emitted a series of beeps that sounded suspiciously like a wedding march. "Well," Admiral Leeds said, a rare smile on his face, "I think this calls for a celebration. And as it happens, we have someone aboard who can make this official right now." From the crowd stepped forward a figure in a different uniform, Commander Gideon Gratis, the Starweaver's chaplain. His eyes twinkled as he approached Jack and Amelia. "What do you say, you two? Shall we make this official, right here, right now?" Jack and Amelia exchanged a look, both nodding enthusiastically. As Commander Gratis began the ceremony, with their diverse group of friends and allies gathered around them, Jack marveled at the twists and turns of fate that had brought him to this moment. From a farm on Earth to the edge of known reality, from soldier to diplomat to cosmic explorer, his journey had been nothing short of extraordinary. And now, as he pledged his love and commitment to Amelia, Jack Cooper knew that the greatest adventure was just beginning. As the ceremony concluded, with Earth shining behind them and the infinite cosmos ahead, Jack and Amelia sealed their vows with a kiss. It was a moment of pure joy, a bright point of light against the vast unknown they were about to explore. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you loved it. Please remember to subscribe if you did like it so you can see more videos like this. And please give us a like and a comment too. I'll see you in the next one.